This comment says we are fostering a dog that came from a hoarding situation. Since becoming more comfortable, he now resource guards me, the commenter, from other humans. The commenter goes on to say that whenever they're at home, the dog barks at anyone who engages with the commenter or who comes into the room. But if the commenter is not at home or if they are outside together, the dog seems less stressed. And they're asking how to go about addressing this behavior. So there are a couple of things just right off the bat that I love about the wording of this comment that I want to call out. First, I love that the commenter has noted the connection between the onset of this behavior and the dog becoming more comfortable. It is very common for dogs in a new environment, whether that's a foster home, an adoptive home, a shelter, or a dog sitter's house. It doesn't have to be a permanent change. When the dog is in a novel situation, particularly if they're also around like novel people in a novel routine, like this sort of situation, it's not uncommon to see them sort of be more quiet observers. Sometimes we'll actually see dogs that are like in a freeze state, which doesn't necessarily mean physically frozen. Think more like dissociation. And sometimes you're not seeing like that high of a stress response, but we are seeing dogs who are not showing their full personality, so to speak, or being as loud about their feelings as they might be later on when they feel safer. And that context is really important because behavior is contextual. And so a dog can be feeling the same emotion at the same level of stress across a variety of experiences and display different behavior in each of those contexts. Because of differences in social support, differences in perception of which survival responses, fight, flight, fawn, fidget, freeze, will be most beneficial, or what their options even are in that situation. Things like the level of social support or where they are. Are they familiar with where they are? Do they have freedom of movement, or are they on leash, or are they in a small space? So behavior is very contextual, and that context can change over time as a dog, such as in the situation, starts to feel safer. So I love that this commenter points that out. I think it's an important piece. The other thing I love that this commenter says is that they point out that the dog seems less stressed in these other situations, the being outside or when the commenter is not home. And I love that because a lot of times what I'll hear is that the dog is fine. And this commenter says less stressed. And I think that is such an important distinction. And often, not always, but often in these situations, when I hear that the dog is fine, we dig in deeper and find that the dog is not fine. They are actually less stressed, like this commenter said. So I loved the choice of that language. I think it was wonderful. So the question then is, what do we do to address this situation? So for me, I would want more information before deciding that this was resource guarding behavior. And there's a lot more information, generally speaking, even beyond this particular scenario where the behavior is occurring. I would want a lot more information about the dog as a whole before I weighed in on this specific dog's situation. So that being said, based on the information given in the comment, that is not enough information for me to feel comfortable saying that the behavior is resource guarding. It might be. I would need way more information. But the first thing that comes to mind, the thing that seems potentially more likely and that I'd want to check on first, is I would be curious if this dog has some stranger danger and feels safer expressing their feelings in a more overt way about that stranger danger fear when their human is around. So what that could potentially look like is a dog whose stress is more overt. They may opt for a fight response over like a flight or a shutdown or a fidget or a fawn when their safe person is around because they have social support. And so that feels like a safer option. Where lacking their safe person, they might still be distressed. But present in a different way. And so it may, to our human eyes, look like they are less distressed when really the stress levels are the same or perhaps even higher because the safe person isn't there, but behaviorally it's quieter. And then we could see a similar thing happening when the dog is outside with their safe person. Sometimes having more space increases that perception of the ability to flight. It increases the ability to engage in coping skills. And so sometimes outside is much easier than inside. And so again, I would need a lot more information, but my first assumption here would be that stranger danger piece with differences in behavior related to the space available to the dog and the proximity of the safe person before I would look at resource guarding. It could also be two things. And it could also, of course, still be resource guarding, and I just don't have the additional context to make that the more likely theory behind the function of the behavior. But if the dog is still showing stress without the safe person there in relation to the people, and the stress is about those people, then there is at least likely a stranger danger component involved. And so the first piece would be to figure out really what is the function, what is going on. Is this stranger danger or is this resource guarding behavior? To answer sort of the original question in a different way around how do we address resource guarding of humans, at least in my client population, which is dysregulated dogs, which can include dogs who have experienced trauma, like being from a hoarding situation, resource guarding of people tends to be related to attachment. And so it's not like, oh, my person provides me with things, get away from my person because I don't want you to have really good things, which is how I think sometimes we think about like resource guarding of people. But it's more like the dog's safety, my security, my safety is tied up in being able to access my human, and other people or other dogs or whoever they're guarding from accessing my safe person is a threat to the dog's safety. And so the dog feels like they are in danger if their safe person, it presents in different ways. If their safe person doesn't have their full focus on the dog, or if the person is engaging with another dog or person, or another dog or person is approaching the safe person, etc. And so what we want to do there is build out more secure attachment. Safety does not only exist with this person. You are actually safe in so many ways. So we are empowering the dog to self-regulate, giving them the skills that they need to help themselves feel better. We are co-regulating with them. We are absolutely making them feel safe within the relationship with the safe person. We're also building out safe relationships with other people. And if there's a stranger danger component happening there, addressing the stranger danger I see often does help with the resource guarding, because by nature of this working with the stranger danger, we're building out other safe relationships. There's a lot of focus, and I would say in either situation, but also like continuing to talk about how we address resource guarding of humans, there's going to be a lot of work around agency and communication. So the dog making sure the dog knows that they are heard and understood in the world by their safe person and also by other people. So we're not allowing, for example, other people to pet them without consent. We're introducing them to other relationships where people can hear the dog and respect what the dog is saying. We're making sure that the dog has ways to communicate what they want. Does the dog have a way to, for example, ask to go outside? Do they have a clear signal that means they're hungry? Do they have a clear signal, a way to ask for affection? Do they have a way to control their world? And those are going to be things that I would apply to any dysregulated dog. But you can see how we sort of are really focused on the expansion of safe relationships when it comes to the idea that the dog's sense of safety might all be tied up within that safe person. And certainly that can overlap. We can see dogs who have the stranger danger and are resource guarding the safe person. But I would want more information in this with this particular situation. I would want more information before I felt comfortable saying, yes, that does indeed sound like resource guarding. It sounds, I would be more comfortable with this, limited information, saying it sounds like we have some stranger danger going on and a variation of the expression of the stress response based on context.